Hello, Shubi and Christine. This is your old pal Mark from the 712 class showing you the rest of the homework, or at least what I think the rest of the homework is. And even if I have it right, there might be a better way of doing it. But when last we left off on step number 7, which was right here, which showed that we imported this New York City Felonies into our RStudio software, and that we renamed the object Felonies. And this Felonies is this giant data set here with all of those different felonies and all of the different things that one could put a variable on for each column about, information about felonies. Now, when last we left off, we successfully did step number 7 by making this object called murders, where we said, hey, murders are equal to everything in the felonies table, but everything in the felonies table where the offense is equal to murder. So if we go all the way here, we can see that we now have only murder as the offense variable, because it's the whole table, but just where the offense equals murder. And we were successful doing that right when we left off. Now, the next step is to create this data frame, where population is the first vector, and it has to match in the same order with borough, which is the other vector. And if you look up here, you see I made population and borough. It's a little, above the screen here, but borough is the name of the vector that I used to make this column in the frame, and population is the vector, the object that I made to make this. So I set them both up and match them up in a data frame. So now I have my nice data frame, and my nice data frame I think is called p-table. So if we come down here, you'll see that, yeah, this is called p-table, like population table. And then what I did was I successfully merged this population table with the murders table. And that's this line here. I said, hey, all table, which is the final object, the big fat table that'll have everything. It'll have all of the murders, or everything in the murders table, and it'll also have everything in P table, which is, as you know, this frame here that I talked about making a while ago. Now, whenever you merge, apparently you have to match the column by something called a key, because the column called borough is in this population table, and if we come over to our murders table, you can see the column called borough is also here. Now, it's very important that you spell it exactly the same in both tables, and it's very important that you use the right capital letter and so on, so that these two things match up perfectly. If these two things match up perfectly, that's what they call the key, because that will match it. And after we type in this command to merge the two tables, it means you'll be left with a final table that will have everything the murders table will have, but in addition to that, everyone in each borough will have an additional column with the corresponding number. For example, everyone listed in here in Queens will have an additional column with this number in that column. Everyone here listed in the Bronx will have an additional column on the murders table, but it'll really be called all table, but it will have an additional column. If you're Bronx, you'll have an additional column with this. And that's what happens when you merge and you use borough as the key. So I went ahead and did that, and trust me, these two things are merged. Now, the last thing you're supposed to do is calculate murders per capita per borough. Well, how do you do that? Well, you probably knew before this video that to get the per capita murders by borough, you would have to divide the Manhattan population, Queens population, etc., divided by how many murders are in that borough. So if we knew how many murders were in each borough, we can divide it by what we already have in the as a separate object, the population of each borough. So how do we get the murders in each borough? Well, you have to remember that this final table, the all table, has only murders. Every single row, the offense is murder. So if the entire table has murders, then all we would have to do is add up every appearance of the word Brooklyn in the column borough, and then we would know the total number of murders in Brooklyn. And we could add up the total number of appearances of the word Queens in this column, and then we would know the total number of murders in Queens, etc. In other words, if we could summarize the data in just this column, we would know how many appearances of each item in that column, and then we would know how many murders were in each borough. So how do we do that? Well, we type in this. We type in a new object called SB, which is the same as the summary of the entire table, but just the column of borough. So if we're summarizing this, it means we're going to get the total number of Brooklyn and the total number of Queens, etc., etc. So we make this object called SB equal to the summary of all of those instances. We hit enter, and now when we ask the computer to show us SB, it shows us the summary. It says SB, which is the summary of everything. Bronx is 68, Brooklyn is 102, Manhattan is 31, Queens is 48, and Staten Island is 8. And that adds up to 247. So not only do we have a summary, but we have this summary now is equal to a vector, which is this object. And as we all know, you can do mathematics from one vector to another. And if we have to divide the number of murders in each borough by the population in each borough, then we would get the per capita murder in each borough. Now, I already have this vector called population, which is this row. So I have SB, which is the summary of, the total number of murders in each borough. And now we're going to divide that into the population of each borough. Because if I type in population, pop U, and then the computer helps me here, if I type this in, I get these numbers. And these numbers correspond to this table. So one might think that all you have to do is put into the computer the summary of boroughs. Actually, for division, you would do it the opposite. You might think that you type in population, which is the number of people in each borough, / which is divided by SB, which is the number of murders in each borough, and you may think that that's the right answer. However, that would be wrong. And the reason it would be wrong is because the position of the numbers in the vector population does not correspond to the position of the numbers in the summary of the borough. Because you see, this number here is the population of Manhattan, and it's the first object. So if we divided, you would be dividing the number of murders in the Bronx divided by the number of people in Manhattan. And that's just not right. So unfortunately, the only way that I don't know how to change the order of this population to make it alphabetical order. And I also want to say, if you name each object, you can't do math, because then you get an error message that you're doing math on a string instead of a number. So the only thing that I could do, is make another object, I think, called pop order, yes, which is my new vector, which has the numbers in the proper corresponding order. In other words, the first number in pop order, the vector, is the population of the Bronx. You see, here's the Bronx, 14 whatever, and that's the first number here. So when we divide, it'll match up. You see, the second number here is the population of Brooklyn. So that when we divide SB, the summary of the boroughs, by pop order, then we get the murders per capita in Brooklyn. So it will be pop order divided by SB. Pop order, which is this here, divided by SB, which is this vector here. Now, after I hit enter, okay, now it did give me the results of each number. This is the result of the number of murders in the Bronx divided by the population. That means there's one murder for every 38,555 and a half people. In Brooklyn, there's one murder for every 16,042 people, etc. Now, I don't know why I got this message, and not only am I baffled why I got this message, I'm even more baffled why the first time I did it, I didn't get this message. But it is apparently giving us the right answer for each individual borough, and I would like to know, why did I get the message longer object is not a multiple of the shorter object length, when in fact they have the same number of objects. Each of the vectors, pop order and SB, both have 5 objects. So if anybody knows the answer to why I'm getting that message, or if anybody wants to tell me there's probably a better way to find the murders per capita in R based on this information, I would love to hear it. Thanks, guys. Good luck.